Hey, happy Wine Wednesday. Here we are, Canadian wine lovers, Carl's Wine Club members. We are live. This is Henry of Pelham week. Uh, Exciting. I have some terrific wine in my glass today. We just cracked a couple of beauties that I really excited to talk about. We have someone in the green room that we're going to introduce to you in a few minutes. But it's an exciting week. We have so much to talk about. Mira, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. Cheers. It's Wine
Cheers to
Wednesday and
you.
finally summer. We've been waiting for this moment all year for it to be hot and amazingly summery.
You look pretty summery.
Yeah, it's warm here in the Okanagan finally. We had a 34 degree with the humidex yesterday. Finally.
Finally. Yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there. And I'll tell you one thing. It's probably one of the first red that I enjoyed in the last couple weeks. What we cracked today, this
Yeah.
red was off the chart. But for the rest, I'll tell you one thing. That like the white right now, that's what with the kind of weather that we're having here, it's that's what we need. A good value rosé that we're going to talk in a few minutes, a fumé blanc,
Mm,
and
it's in
some
my
great
glass.
chart. Yeah, I know, eh? That's pretty cool. The nose of
Gorgeous.
that is pretty cool. Now, listen, we had an amazing trip in Niagara a couple of weeks ago. It was all over 10 days over there. We met some amazing people. There's one of the wineries that I really wanted to see, really wanted to chat. It was Henry of Pelham because to me, and I didn't have the chance to get there and meet with the brothers because there's three brothers who run the place there, and I was pretty disappointed that I couldn't make it. But tonight we have the chance to meet with one of the three brothers, one of the co-owner of the winery. So Daniel Speck is going to join us in couple minute time. But before we join Daniel, uh, Mira and I have been discovering some amazing wines from Henry of Pelham in the last few weeks. Especially Mira, before we get to Daniel, I want you to tell the members the amazing moment that you had last week with one of the very specific wine we've tasted.
Right. So you cracked open a Baco Noir, and I'm pretty sure it was my second one I've ever had because Carl knows everything about wine, and I know only what I like and what I don't like. And I started drinking wine during the pandemic. Okay. So I just say, do I like it or not? And if I do, how many glasses would I like to have tonight? And he opened that one up. I forget what we're eating, something meaty off the barbecue. And we had that Baco Noir. And I was like, wow, this is so fruity and refreshing. And it has great complexity. It was so much fun. And I loved it. And Carl is not, in general, he's a huge fan of Chardonnay. He's a huge fan of what else do you love, Carl? Syrah, right? Those are yours.
Sure, Chard, Meritage, right?
What I've always respected about this guy is that he will rate wines based on the merits of the wine, not based on what he likes and what he doesn't like. But of course, he gets way more excited when it's a Chardonnay or a Syrah. So it's a Baco Noir, right? So it's a different varietal than we normally would open. And so I had the first sip and I was super thrilled. So then it got Carl even more excited, I guess, to try it.
Yeah, no, that was pretty funny because she started to taste the wine and I started to taste it. I just putting my nose down and she's smiling and she's smiling and she's reaching for the bottle a couple times and she's pouring her glass and at some point she started giggling at the table and I'm like, oh man, you have a lot of fun right now. And she said, it's probably one of my favorite wine that I had in months.
Yeah,
And like
fantastic.
you guys know, we taste a lot of great wine, but she got so to enjoy that wine so much. So I thought I had to mention it. I wanted to share that moment with the members because I rarely see you that excited about a wine, and you got kind of like at a an affair with that wine for a couple minutes. It was just like
I'm
so
pretty
great to
sure
watch.
we emptied the bottle that night, which is rare because we taste a lot of different wines, right? So, yeah, that was a really good one.
There you go. I don't think that we can wait longer before
No.
we introduce our special guest tonight because you know Mira, we have lots of great guests in that show. Almost every week we had someone very special, but the story that we're going to hear tonight, I can't wait because there's a Daniel Speck, one of the three brother who are at the forefront of this amazing winery in Ontario. They have some pretty cool story to tell us, so I can't wait to bring Daniel in and let's listen to these stories. Okay.
Yeah, so this is Daniel Speck of Henry of Pelham.
There you
Hello, thanks
go,
for having me.
Danielle.
Thank you for having me tonight.
Well,
Thank you for
thanks for being here. And just looking at your background right there, it seems like you guys are having a pretty nice and warm day as well.
Oh, it's gorgeous here. Yeah, I mean we call Niagara the fruited plain. It's paradise here. Yeah.
And you know what, Danielle? We had the chance to experience Niagara between June the June 19th to June the 30th. So we were there. We rented a place in Niagara Falls where the kids
Nice.
could go play on Clifton Hills every day, and so
Excellent.
we can go visit wineries. But we had a couple days of 35, 36 with humidex. They were
Oh yeah,
pretty
for sure.
darn warm. But yeah, so we had the chance to experience your wine regions. So we're here in Summerland, BC.
Beautiful.
Finally, yeah, I don't know, you won't believe it. Some of our sub-region here in the Okanagan are 5 weeks behind
Oh, is
in
that
terms of
right?
that much. Five
Wow.
weeks behind in terms of growing season. We had a horrible spring, and it's just starting. So some of the vineyard are just getting out of flowering right now. The fruit sets are
Whoa.
just coming up.
Okay.
So
Well, and
I
I
know.
heard I heard unfortunately it's been a pretty tough winter too, right? There's been a bit of damage from the yeah, it's and we're facing a bit of that too in our own vineyards. Niagara got a bit of a frost in early January. In fact, my family and I all flew out to Whistler, my brothers and our wives and kids, and we were there the first week of January and had unbelievable snowfall. Literally, as we flew in, and over the next 24 hours, something like 2 feet of snow fell. Unbelievable skiing at Whistler. We came home and a week later, it got a bit of a whacking with the winter cold, but we've managed it. And I'll tell you, the one variety of all of them, you were talking about Baco earlier when I was listening from the background. Baco is looking great. The crop is a full crop, super healthy. A little touch and go with some of the other varieties, but the quality is going to be good so far this year. We've had a great growing season, so we can't complain about that. But Baco always pushes through for us.
I know. Hey, this is the tough of the guys. Like the tough guy, nothing can destroy Baco. I love it. Like Hardy. No, I was talking with many farmers when I was there, and like many of them was meant in Niagara on the Lake, even on the Beamsville bench, and many
Yeah,
of them were mentioning they're down 20 or 30% of their
yeah,
crop
for
because they
sure.
got hit by frost pretty hard as well. So, and it's the same here. Same here.
It's it's a global thing. I was talking to somebody in Valdo Biadene this morning, which is
Yeah.
in northeastern Italy. That's where Prosecco comes from, right? And
Codigliano and all of that region, right?
super hot. It was today. She said it was 36 degrees Celsius, of course. And they've got all kinds of disease pressure as well with that. The last couple of years in Burgundy, including this one in Champagne, just unbelievable frost. Actually, Bordeaux this year got
Yeah.
hit with a frost. Then they got hit with
With the
hail, and now
hailstorm.
and then mildew from over temperature. And New Zealand 2 years ago
Yeah.
just got whacked with frost and other things. It's just been a wild ride, And so these climates that were once seen as marginal are also now starting to become a little more um, uh, the places where wine can grow as well, which is quite interesting. And so, yeah, the world is changing, and there's adaptation going on, and some of what's happening in northern latitude winemaking, perhaps you could say, is a result of that. But this is just the evolution of things, and but the whole world's gonna have a really weird year for wine this year. But we won't run out because there's a lot of wine being made in this world. So
that
more
that's for
more
sure.
than
And
there
you
are
know,
bellies that drink it. So
I I had some of our members who were flying here Canada today. They sent us a couple pictures
yeah,
of the Cab Merlots on board of Air Canada business class. I was like, wow,
yeah.
that's very well suited for what we're doing this week. So,
What,
uh,
Henry of Pelham? Was it
yeah,
ours?
and real
Oh,
film
great.
yeah, in on flight Air Canada. I was like,
That's what I'm
wow, that's
drinking
pretty
right
cool.
now. That's what I'm drinking
Yeah,
right now. This
there
camera
you
is funny.
go. There you go.
Everything in this camera is reversed, so it's screwing me up. Hold on, I gotta flip this thing over. I'm gonna go crazy. Let's see if I can do it this way. Does that work? Did I just make everybody dizzy? That just makes it easier for me.
Perfect. Perfect. Get it
Yeah,
in your eyes. My setting wasn't right either. I'm on vertical. I'm on horizontal today. I don't know. Who cares? I think people care about more about the stories behind Henry of Pelham. So Danielle, I want to get into the thick of the story because
sure.
we have like there's something that I know that our members really like, and for me it's been the same thing. Behind every wine there's a waiting story to be told, and you
Absolutely.
guys, your family story is pretty cool as well. So let's backtrack to 1984 or around these years, and
Yeah.
you and your two brothers were 10 years old, and something pretty special happened that you had to get out there and help plant a vineyard, and that's how the that's how the story started.
Well, yeah. So my dad was from St. Catharines. He's passed away now since 1993, and my mother was from New York, and they met down there when he was a Catholic priest, and uh, they decided to come to Canada and start a family, and that was back in 1966, if I recall. And they ran a small school in Toronto. Long story short, my dad was a teacher, and my mother was a book editor. Pardon me, but they started a school together in Toronto and ran it out of our house, and then out of a place down the street, and then the thing went on and on. And somewhere along the line in the early 80s, this piece of land that had been settled by her family, amazingly, back in the 1790s, had come up for sale. And it was the last piece of land that had been sort of carried down through various cousins in the family. And my dad was got excited about it and bought this piece of land off of our cousins. And so that was in 1982. And what was cool about that is that that land had been settled by a guy named Nicholas Smith. And Nicholas, who was part Iroquois, and he was a translator and a bugle boy with Butler's Rangers, who was the local militia. So he was like basically like Métis, I guess you'd say today. He fought with the British against the Americans. He came north from the U.S., fought with the Americans against the British against the Americans rather. But at the end of the war, you couldn't go back to what became the States. And so he stayed in Canada, and he was granted a chunk of land, 100 acres for himself and 100 for his wife and several of their children in various parts of Niagara. And he kind of shifted it around, consolidated it. And actually, Nicholas was a pretty shrewd guy and had done very well in real estate back in the 1790s. And one of his sons was a fellow named Henry, and so, and their last name was Smith. So my last name is Speck because of my dad's dad, my grandfather. But through my grandmother's side, and I never got to meet her, unfortunately, or my grandfather, but she was a Smith. And so the name got lost in our generation. But Henry Smith, the son of the bugle boy and translator with Butler's Rangers, Henry Smith owned a little piece of land that fell along Pelham Road, and Pelham Road was named after the town of Pelham. And so he owned that, and he charged a toll on it. He had a little toll booth. You could do things like that. It was early Canada. And then he also built an inn and a tavern and a horse track. There's a lot of gambling going on out there. He planted a vineyard to make some wine, and they ran this thing. And then when Henry passed away, his wife Catherine took control of it and managed it until she passed away. And then it sort of got passed down through a couple of generations, and it was sold off. But it was always kind of the center of the Smith family community. So my dad, when he grew up here, he was born during the Depression. He was born in 1931. He and his cousins and siblings, he came from a family of 10 kids, if you can believe it. They would go hang out at the ballroom in the old building we have, and they'd square dance and do things like that. And it was just very, traditional sort of country life. So flash forward, my dad and my mom are living in Toronto. They're running the school. He's bought this piece of land, and he thought it would be cool to plant a vineyard, or at least to have someone plant a vineyard. And what he did is he told my oldest brother, Paul, who was 16 and had a driver's license, look, on the weekends, I need you to go out here in the summers and plant this vineyard. And because you have the driver's license, you can bring your brothers and they'll work with you. And so Paul was 16 and Matt would have been 13 and I would have been about 8 when this all started. And over the next 14, 15 years, that's what we did every summer and every weekend, damn near, planting a vineyard and tending to it. So that's how the original vineyards got planted. And in 1988, we were making wine and trying to figure that out. That's how Henry of Pelham got started.
So which kind of grape that you guys planted first? Was it Baco at the beginning?
Yeah. So my mother, when we all started this project, we lived in a part of Toronto. For anyone who's online from Toronto, they'll know the neighborhood called the Annex. And the Annex in those days was a bit of a dodgy neighborhood, but started to come up. And we were living there. And the Four Seasons was in an area called Yorkville, which still is, just on the other side of the Annex. And for a treat, we'd go there to the Studio Cafe, it was called. And we'd go there for dinner. And I remember specifically the night we're in there. My mother was the only person who drank wine in our family. We didn't even drink. In our family, we didn't really drink or drink wine. My mother would have the odd glass of wine. Really, she liked to have a martini every 6 months kind of thing. But I remember we were there and we had a bottle of this amazing red wine, which is unusual for us as a family. And she said, we need to make something like this. And I have a bottle of it in my office now. And it was a Valpolicella from a producer called Quintarelli, very famous.
Oh my God. I've met the old man 5 years ago when I was out there. Yeah, they are like
royalty. Right?
When it's time to talk about Amarone, the Quintarelli family, it's the top of the top, right?
That's the top of the top.
I walked the vineyard with them.
Oh, amazing! I must have been on something else. I mean, they're serious, right? Like they
absolutely incredible.
Amarone.
Absolutely incredible.
So this is in probably 1980, 82, I guess, or 83, something like that. And we that bottle of wine, which today is, I don't know, $100, $200 a bottle. In those days, it was probably $25 a bottle, right? But in a restaurant, maybe twice that. It was expensive for the time, but not like exceptionally so, but not inexpensive. And she said, well, whatever we do, we have to make a bottle of wine like this. And what's funny about that is that in 1980, whatever, white wine was 5 times consumed 5 times to the level of red wine in Ontario. So she would say, whatever we do, we got to make a lot of red wine. It's got to be big and amazing like this. And we were all like, okay. And when we spoke, getting advice as to what to plant, they said plant Baco and plant Riesling. And that's primarily what we planted. And we had no idea that the bar she was setting for us, but that was what we were always, inspired by with that Baco. We also planted, just as a side note, some other crazy grape varieties that we ended up taking out. Half the vineyard was planted to something called 23-5-12. You might not have heard of it. Yeah.
No, been in the business for 25 years, Dan. Never heard of that.
yeah, it's not too common. So we got rid of that. We had a few things in there that we had to get rid of, but that was it. And then the tobacco just, I mean, a lot of originally as a company, we were this is 1980 again, 1988. We're making our first wines. We were originally known as a Gamay and Riesling house. That was the foundation of the business, but tobacco just completely took over, and then so did Cabernet Merlot, Pinot Noir, Pinot Grigio, and Chardonnay and Riesling. And it just kind of went from there. So.
Yeah. No, and when we're looking in terms of production, you guys are probably around like what, the 30,000 cases or something a little bit more north of that?
We're a little bit more north of that. Like our for Henry of Pelham, we're about 170,000 cases.
Okay, okay.
We're a state. We have 250 acres planted.
Okay.
And another 50 acres are either forest or some of it's buildings and stuff like that. We do source from some of our neighbors as well across the peninsula, and but they're all of our wines are really, a lot of that fruit comes right from our main parcel, right? It's all contiguous. So over the years, we've been buying from our neighbors. We've been pulling back what was the original holding and planting it. As of a couple of years ago, we fully planted it out, and so we have vineyards coming into production still. So we'll be offsetting production as needed from elsewhere. Our goal is not to be 100% estate grown. To be honest with you, we like to buy fruit as well because there's other interesting places we like to play in. But that's what we do. So.
No, because when you look at the production, is that if you have enough to supply an airline, I used to be the consultant for WestJet, and I remember when we decided to go Canadian wine, that the biggest challenge was to find wineries who can supply enough. So definitely,
absolutely.
And when you have 250 acres and you can source as well from some of your neighbors, now you can source enough. So let's get to your portfolio a little bit, because what we have here this week is pretty special. Obviously, the Speck Family Reserve line, the three of I like to call it the big boys. It's like with the Pinot, the Cab Merlot, and the Baco Noir. These are more small batches wine. These are not wines that are produced at the 1,000 cases level, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, all of our production out of our vineyards is premium production. I mean, that's what our entire focus as a company from the day we opened our doors was we have to be a premium producer because we can't compete on the volume end of the business. So I know in the context maybe of, someone who is not too familiar with the wine business, that 170,000 cases might sound big, but it's not that big. Like, if you think of some of the great Bordeaux houses that are $1,000, $2,000 a bottle, they're all 60,000 case producers, getting, almost 100 times the price per bottle that we're getting, so really what we've done is we've spent a lot of our time focused on understanding our terroir. We replanted some of these vineyards, more than once. Like I say, my brothers and I have been making wine here now since 1988, so that's 30 whatever years. And when we get into what we call our estate range, which is I think most of the wines that we have tonight, and even our Speck Family Reserves, which is deeper within the estate, and those are a big part of our program. Those are wines that are all about understanding the site, the aspect, which is something that we can play with more than most people. I can talk about that if you're interested. And then the clone and all the classic things, but we have a real varied terrain to play with. And so when it gets into our Fumé Blanc, for example, or our estate Chardonnay or the Speck Family Reserve Baco and things like that, there are massive terroir effects that we can play with. And I guess what I'm getting at is that one of the things that makes our sub-appellation, the Short Hills Bench, really interesting is that 90% of the south-facing slopes in Niagara are actually within our sub-appellation. And that's because the erosion of the Niagara Escarpment by a giant waterfall, another Niagara Falls. There were three Niagara Falls once. There's three of them. And one of them is on the edge of our property in the Short Hills Provincial Park. It's no longer a waterfall. It's a very small waterfall now, but it used to be huge. And
Huh.
it created a valley. And that valley has been eroding in for the last maybe 7,000 years. And it's laid these beautiful rolling hills. And the short hills allow us to have more southern facing slopes, as well as northern facing, eastern and western, like all of them. And so when we plant a vineyard, we didn't start out this way, I'm not going to lie. But as we've learned more and more over the last many years, we've planted vineyards with that in mind. And so we can take advantage, where do you want to have more ripeness in a variety? Where do you want to have less ripeness in a variety? That's important. Both are good, actually. And that gives us, I think, a patchwork, a quilt of fruit to work with to make some really, really interesting and complex wines.
But that you jumped the gun on my question. I was really intrigued about the Short Hill appellation. So now that I got more of my answer, so do you source? So most of your fruit are from the Short Hill appellation. Mm-hmm. What is the other appellation? Do you have any other appellation where you would say it's a key source of fruit for you guys, or it's mostly 90-80% of your fruits are coming from there, or is there other appellation that you say like there's something special there and they get something that you really target?
They all have something. I mean, the one thing I would say about Niagara, and this would be true of the Okanagan for that matter, is that it's really geared towards premium production. It's not like high volume, bulk wine. There's an aspect of that out there for sure, but really it's like if you look at Burgundy, there is no high volume, low end part of Burgundy, right? Like there are places that produce more and less, and price points come into play, but none of the viticulture and none of the winemaking is really well oriented towards entry level, like super entry level wine. Do they exist?
Like
yes.
If the Macon Village is the entry level, okay, that's entry level,
but
not
$20 to $35, right?
That's exactly it, right? We're far from bulk wine there.
Yeah. So it's having said that, I think that is kind of shows the great value that's in Niagara. I mean, you can buy wines in Niagara that are 50, which I love, but they're half the price. We don't have the same pedigree yet. So when you so yes, there are other appellations that I really like, though. I mean, it depends what we're talking about. I mean, for example, when I look west of us into the 20-mile bench, the Beamsville bench, these are places that we have sourced grapes from forever, and they're very different from each other. All three benches are extremely different. They're beautiful for their own reasons, and those wines often get blended together historically. So there's an actual sub-appellation called Niagara Escarpment, and that actually includes all three of those appellations together. We don't label any wines that way, but we actually have wines that would include those, and often very premium ones. I love, oddly enough, the more commercial end of Niagara on the Lake, the central part of it, which would be more of the volume production relative to our wine region. But actually, there's some sites in there that are really interesting that produce really good fruit, and those go into different wines. Some of the more volume end of our production they're elevated wines though. So it depends what you're doing. The lakeshore sites are great for Merlot and even for sparkling based wines. They all play their role. It just depends on the grape variety and the price point you're after, but it's all premium. Like none of it's not premium.
Absolutely. I agree with you, because then that's a little bit why also I wanted to target the estate series, just because these wines are more targeted, focused, and you discover it when you taste the wine one at a time. So what I have here in my glass to start here is the Fumé Blanc.
Mm.
And I kind of ask a question to our members today on social media. Difference between a Fumé Blanc and a Sauvignon Blanc. So we have the whole story, but like going back to the early 80s with Robert Mondavi and the whole thing. So and I promise our people that we're going to talk about the difference between the Sauvignon Blanc and the Fumé Blanc. So in terms of Henry of Pelham, what would be the biggest difference, would you say? Why would you call your wine a Fumé Blanc, not a Sauvignon Blanc?
So 100%, it is a nod to Robert Mondavi. Robert Mondavi, well, first off, California back in the 70s was growing a lot of Sauvignon Blanc. And it was hard to sell Sauvignon Blanc. No one knew the variety. No one was really interested in it. It was sort of became kind of a volume bulk part of the business. And yet they grew a very, very interesting wine there. And Mondavi, as the story goes, and maybe it's apocryphal, but as the story goes, he was in Pouilly-Fumé, which, adjacent to Sancerre in the Loire Valley. And in Pouilly-Fumé, they, of course, grow Sauvignon Blanc, and the whole story there, I mean, there's a little bit of fantasy here, but they would say that the flint in the soil comes through in the wine. I don't know if that's quite true or not, but certainly the wines do have a flinty aspect to them, a smokiness, the fumé, and that's why it's called Pouilly-Fumé, Pouilly, Pouilly-Fumé. So Mondavi, being a great marketer as well as a great winemaker, maybe in the reverse order, a great winemaker who is a great
I would say
marketer.
so. Yeah.
He was looking for a way to tell the story of Sauvignon Blanc in California and started to call it Fumé Blanc. And what he was doing was barrel fermenting Sauvignon Blanc, or barrel aging and barrel fermenting, and some variation of that. And that is really very much a tradition of Bordeaux, actually, which is also a big home to Sauvignon Blanc. And Bordeaux, like the Napa Valley, let's say, are Mediterranean climates. And in fact, Bordeaux is a maritime climate, whereas Napa is a Mediterranean. There's a subtle difference there. But the wines that he was producing perhaps were on the riper end of what they would do in Bordeaux. And so for him, what emerged out of that in the vernacular was, when we speak of Fumé, we're really thinking of barrel-aged Sauvignon Blanc, whereas in Pouilly-Fumé, they're speaking of the soil as an aspect to it. But it was interesting for us, we've always made it, a non-oak style of Sauvignon Blanc, a bright, fresh style. I actually make very good Sauvignon Blanc in Niagara. But what this wine, it was my brother Matt, who was the advocate for us making this. Experimentally, we started playing with barrel fermented and barrel aged Sauvignon Blancs with a slightly riper fruit, and made these really interesting wines that are how do I say this? They're probably more like white Bordeaux if I have to compare them. They have a melony roundness or richness to them. The oak is there as the frame to the picture, the frame, not the picture itself, and very it gives a frame on a painting gives the painting context. I know I'm sounding very pretentious here, but the frame gives the definition to it, right? It focuses you. And the oak in wine, in my opinion, in general, that's what it's supposed to do. And with this wine, 100% oak and Sauvignon Blanc, oak tannins do something to pop the fruit in a really nice way. And so we do really interesting things in the cellar to make this wine as much as in the vineyard. And I love it. I mean, it's a wine that my wife, who basically only drinks oak-aged Chardonnays, I've been trying to sneak this one in a lot, and it's become a favorite of hers as well. So
I have to agree, and like that barrel usage just give an extra layer, give some depth, give some character, and also some complexity. The Sauvignon Blanc can be a very linear type of grape. Throw that a little bit in the barrel. Now you get a little bit more roundness, some depth, some complexity. You achieve that beautifully on that one. I love that. But there's still freshness. You don't take away the freshness of what you're looking for in the Sauvignon Blanc, and just adding a little bit of roundness, depth, and complexity. I was reading that Karen Emmond from the Toronto Star gave that wine a 93 points. Hey, guess what? I completely agree with her. This is a summer wine, but there's so many. It's so food friendly. And there's so much versatility that you can do with that. This is bang on. I love that wine. My Mira, my wife, amazing business partner. She is also a big fan of Sauvignon Blanc. I want to bring her in, and I want to know what she thinks because she didn't have the chance to taste that wine yet. And Mira, what did you think of that killer Sauvignon Blanc?
So I haven't tasted it. I was on the phone with a member who is going to be coming in for our rosé tasting by the lake on Saturday.
There you go.
From Prince George, which is a heck of a drive.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a long haul.
You know where Prince George is?
I do.
Yeah.
I've had the pleasure of visiting BC quite a bit over the last number of years for work primarily, and then for a great vacation not that long ago. So
awesome.
It's a beautiful place.
Yes, it is, and we're so lucky to be right on the lake here in the Okanagan. It's outrageous. So Sauvignon, you're talking about Fumé Blanc?
But we're just talking about, just we wanted to explain the members the biggest difference between Fumé Blanc and Sauvignon Blanc. Like same kind of grape, that's Sauvignon Blanc, but just a different usage. So we want to demystify a little bit that the difference in appellation, how you call the grapes. What do you think of that?
That is gorgeous. See, I fell in love, Daniel, I fell in love with Sauvignon Blanc, okay? I started drinking wine during the pandemic. I had no idea this is what Carl does. I knew he
so
did
what did you drink before the pandemic? Did you drink
like water?
Water? That'll kill you. Do you know what fish do in water?
Yeah, I know. It's cruel. It's absolutely animal cruelty.
Yeah, and then the pandemic hit, and then this guy's at home every day. He's got like 20 bottles all open at the same time. I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, well, surviving the pandemic.
And then he's like, okay, that's it. I'm done with these. And they're like pretty much full. So someone had to help with that, right? So someone had to go back and drink that wine.
The pandemic for me was clearing out every bottle in my wine fridge, even the stuff like, there's a bottle of Scheurebe. How old is that thing? Let's drink it. Oh my God, time to get rid of all the Gewürztraminer. Not that I don't like Gewürztraminer, but it's a once in a while. I drank a lot of it. Everything that was laying around, white port that was like 10 years old. Sangria.
Get out of here. Danielle, I have a funny story, but before I started Carl's Wine Club, I was a wine consultant in Alberta, helping wine collectors to build their purchase strategy, but I was also doing cellar management. Okay. And sometime I used to get into someone's cellar. Yeah, but you get into someone's cellars who have like 758, like 1,000 bottles, but they got some regular Chianti from 1982, right. And I'm just turning around. It's like, okay, what's the purpose of you never thought of drinking that 25 years ago? Oh, someone told me if I age my wine, they're gonna taste better. I think no, they're dead. They're dead for 20 years. Some people I threw out like by dozens of cases at the time, hundreds of thousands of dollars of wine down the drain.
If it's that old, it becomes, think of your wine cellar like a freezer. If you put something in there that isn't meant to age, it's like freezer burned meat, like that 22-year-old entry-level Chianti. That's going to be great reduction for your duck sauce.
Yeah, good sauce. Good sauce.
If you're a good, somebody who has an old wine cellar should be a good cook, because you're gonna have a lot of wine you're gonna be cooking with. That's
Absolutely.
Me. I'm terrible at managing a wine cellar. That's why I never have aged wines. I just drink them young. I love old wine. I can't age them properly. I'm not disciplined enough. I need you. I need you, Carl.
Yeah, I'm more of a guy who like my wine feisty. I like the wine filled with energy. I enjoy a well-aged wine once in a while, but it's not my gig. I'm not a big fan of the secondary or tertiary aromas. I like them when they're feisty. I like the tannin. I like when it bites. So it's purely my personal preference. Don't make me wrong. A good old wine once in a while is good, but it's not necessarily something that I look over and over again. So
I like them aged and ropey. you know.
Yeah.
Not that my wife is 7 years older than me. She's not aged in ropey. She looks younger than me. But I like everything with a little bit of age.
Yeah. I'll keep the same line with you. I like them young and feisty. She's almost
Oh,
10 years younger than me. So
run, Mira, run!
Oh my gosh.
Oh, so yeah, no, that Sauvignon, that Fumé Blanc, and also not overpowering with the wood. The wood is present, but not overpowering. We can still appreciate the purity of the fruit. So it's one of the key to me for a balanced Fumé Blanc. So
I think any wine too. I mean, oak is a spice, right? At the end of the day, it's part of the tradition of how we transport wine, and it affected how the flavors of wine and things like that. But if it becomes the dominant character, then it's just wine is not a vehicle for oak. It just kind of it should be there in the right way. Having said that, there's a whole genre of wine is really all oak, and that's a whole thing. And that's kind of as Brian Schmidt.
I know.
What's up there, Schmitty? Speaking of a great guy, Brian Schmidt. Now I'm going back to offline.
I know.
He
We
hooked me up
we
at
went.
Vineland. Did you go? He hooked me up at Vineland. He's the winemaker at Vineland Estates Winery, also a BC boy, and hooked me up for a hell of a meal at his at the restaurant at Vineland for lunch. We had some friends visiting from BC, and it was one of the best meals I've had. Definitely, probably the best meal I've had this summer. Actually, this year I was going to say. Actually, definitely.
You
Check
know
out
what,
Vineland.
Danielle? We had the privilege to tailgate with Brian when we were there. He took us on a tailgate run. We went driving his truck around his vineyard for a couple of hours. So
Well, he's a hillbilly. I mean,
he's an absolute beauty.
There were, I gotta tell you, Daniel, there were about I don't know, like 40 Lamborghinis in their parking lot that day.
Sounds about right.
Because the Lamborghini Club was there, and we're all like, we want to look at the Lamborghinis, and Brian's like, no, let's go for a ride in the truck and see the vineyard. He's way more interested in that, which is awesome.
Yeah. Now we got Marcel Morgenstern just joining us. Another good boy.
There he is. I gotta get his email off of Marcel. I was just up at Hillfire last weekend or 2 weekends ago with my son. Did a little shopping up there. It was great. He's got a beautiful little wine shop, amongst other things, up in Font Hill. If anyone hasn't been up there, check it out. Came home with an amazing Alsatian style. It's not a pizza, whatever they call it in Alsace, but it's delicious.
Yeah, he has a good gig. The little flammekuchen here, the little tart.
That's it.
Yeah. This darn guy.
And guess what he opened? Carl, do you remember what vintage it was?
He opened a 1999 Pilateri Cabernet Franc when we were with him.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, for sure.
No, I didn't have, to be honest, Daniel, I didn't have a huge expectation. I was like, okay, I tell you, it's one of the best wine. And no, it was incredible. I've never thought that a 99 Cab Franc from Ontario can age that well.
Oh, for sure they can.
Oh my God, it was incredible. One of the highlights of our trip.
But one of the things that we in our climate, what you find is that the wines, especially the Bordeaux varietals, in a decent vintage, they're very structured wines. And that's just the nature of them. Even our Merlot here is structured, and so. If you have the ripeness, you have a good year with ripeness, and the cap management has been handled properly, so they're not overly extracted in terms of tannins and all the rest. But just kind of find that Goldilocks point. These wines, they age 20 years, no problem. I mean, like, for sure. I mean, when we're talking about producers, reserve tiers that are meant to age that way.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
For sure they do. I mean, like I can give you. In fact, I just had a Cave Spring, not as old as the Pilateri, but a Cave Spring 2012 Cabernet Franc. It's the estate level, so it's sort of in there, I guess, to be the middle tier for them. I was at Treadwell Farm to Table with my brother Matt and our families. We just saw a play at the Shaw, and we're having dinner. We had 2012 Cave Spring Estate Cab Franc. That was the best wine I've had all year. Actually, I was floored. We were both floored by that wine. That was like high end Bordeaux, and it was sold. It was a discount, frankly. And that restaurant, I think, about $150 on the list. You know, in a restaurant, post pandemic, all the rest.
Yeah.
That the retail on that wine should have been $150. It was that's how good it
Wow.
was. Look for that wine, anyone, if you can find it. It's amazing.
So Daniel, if you've been in the biz for a long time, and if I ask, if I look for the great vintage of the past in your area, if I go somewhere, someone's
Mhm.
cellar, and I'm looking for the key vintage, which vintage should I look for? I'm hearing 26, well, obviously 2020. We all know that the quality of 2020 in your area. 2016, I've been hearing that
Yeah, yeah.
it was warm. It was like they brought the Bordeaux varietal to ripeness. Which other vintage should I look for?
If we measure it on the Bordeaux varietals, which are our latest varietals to grow here, 16, 20, absolutely. But my favorite, and 12 is another good one. My favorite might be 2007. I've had some just numerous exceptional wine. Now that's going back. Those are going to be hard to find. But if you're at somebody's house, somebody who knows their wines and cares about Niagara wines and has a good cellar, drink the 2007 Bordeaux Reds.
Okay.
Um, I think a variety like Chardonnay, for example, you don't necessarily always want the biggest years. You need a little bit cooler year, and we get that a little more consistently. I've had a lot of really interesting 2018s. I was just at Redstone
Okay.
on the weekend, I guess it was,
Yeah.
and had their 18 Chardonnay. That's a weird year because it was extremely hot and then weird at the harvest. But so it's not exactly a cool vintage. It's not exactly a hot vintage. It's a hard one to kind of pigeonhole. But the wine was great. But the 19s, the 20s, which is warmer, 19s are cooler. It shows you the consistency of that variety here. All three of those are beautiful. Um, so it kind of depends on the variety. The things that are core to us in Niagara, Chardonnay, Riesling, Pinot Grigio, and the whites. Let's say those are the three main whites. And the reds, Pinot Noir, Baco, I would argue, um, Cab Franc, maybe as a third, and that's often blended with some other varieties. Uh, they're those are the varieties that with great consistency show up every vintage, right? And then the Cab Franc, the only not limitation, but the only proviso I put on that is that it typically, not always, but typically needs some other varietals blended with it to get the right balance, which is normal for Cabernet Franc wherever it's grown. So a little bit of Merlot or a little bit of Sauvignon, a little bit of whatever, even Syrah and other things go in there. Even Baco, Cabernet and Baco actually are quite nice together. So, so I think that if you want consistency, that's where you look. If you're willing to sort of get a little more experimental and push the boundaries a bit and look for those special vintages, then you get into interesting Cabernet Sauvignon, interesting Syrah, and things like that. But our core of our business is around wines that deliver every year. They have vintage variation, but they're always interesting.
Do you guys play a lot with blending Baco, or usually Baco
No.
you go straight varietal, or you like to mix it up a little bit, like do some a little bit blending?
I think the most underrated wine in our portfolio is a wine called Revel, 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 like to celebrate.
Okay.
And it's available in Ontario. It's available in Manitoba, or just about to become a generalist in Manitoba. It's a Cabernet Baco blend, basically Cabernet Franc primarily and Baco. And we've actually made wines variations of this blend uh, as long as we've been in business, actually. And it is a really fun, interesting. It's a throw the steak on the barbecue, like a bone-in ribeye on the barbecue. You're probably smoking a cigar and having this thing, and it does have complexity to it, but you don't care, it's just like you're throwing it back and loving it. It's kind it's a I think it's a great bottle of wine. I mean, in fact, I should be drinking that right now. We
Wow.
also,
Well, you know what? I just cracked this afternoon. I let it breathe for a couple of hours. I have the 2019 Speck Family Cab Merlot in my glass.
oh, cool. Is it good? Is it okay? Is
This
it the
is
can?
freaking
Yeah,
spectacular. Um, I've
it needs
tasted
to
a
air out.
few.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's a decant one. You got to decant that
oh
one.
yeah. I like it's.
Yeah,
It was open for 2 hours, and I threw it in an
perfect.
Enovino. I Enovino it,
Yeah,
so
whip it up.
spread it out, and now it's just so round. And I had some 19. Um, some from the 20 miles, like some specific appellation that I thought it was a little bit too linear, a little bit too much on the acid. Maybe
Mm.
the quality, the fruit component, the maturity, the ripeness of the fruit is absolutely spectacular. There's some rich dark cherry coming out of that, and like this is a real beautiful ripe fruit wine.
Yeah, 19 was a complex vintage. I mean, the winemakers will tell you. I mean, a lot of really, really good wine came out of 2019. But from a, and I would say I'm like, that's a vintage I'm extremely happy with. But there was definitely the winemakers were, and the farmers, like everyone was working there to try to get the pick at the right time relative to the acidity and then sort of manage that in the winery. Because it wasn't a year with great acidity, but also great fruit flavors. So I love that wine. It's definitely a wine that I decant at this stage, but I'm looking forward to that in 10 years.
Oh yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah, I think it'll be very interesting. And it reminds me of trying to think of another vintage like it, maybe a little bit like 2000 and maybe 2000, where those are wines that were real sleepers, and then they really came out. I remember having our 2000 Pinot Noir. It was a couple of years ago now, so the wine was 18 years old probably, and that wine was beautiful. It was drinking beautifully well, and it just held forever. You know?
Yeah, and that's funny because Marcel and I had that conversation about the sleeper vintage, and he was mentioning 2019, and
Yeah,
like because 2020
totally.
has so much attention on the 2020, and it's like yeah, never forget because the one prior to that had a lot of potential as well, and I tend to agree. Sometimes like this has a lot of potential. I absolutely love that. And this afternoon, I rated it. I put my tasting notes together. This is a 92 points, to my opinion.
Thank you.
Absolutely great. I wanted to touch base a little bit about your Chardonnay program before I let
Hmm.
you go.
Hmm.
It's getting late out there, so I don't want to take too much of your time. So you're mentioning a lot. Chardonnay is one of the key grapes in
Oh yeah.
Ontario. I believe that it's one of the top two region in the world for Chardonnay,
Thank you.
and there's Burgundy and there's Ontario.
Thank you.
I never like Chardonnay is my passion, and the amount of outstanding Chardonnay that I taste from your region, it's absolutely off the chart. So, how much energy and what's the whole house philosophy? And how do you treat the Chard at the winery?
So first thing I'd say is that I was just out at Back Ten Cellars last night, I guess it was, and or 2 nights ago rather, and Back Ten is a small winery on Highway 8. Great friends, and they hosted an industry night mostly for store staff and whatnot, but from different wineries. 87 people showed up, and my wife and I were great friends with Christine and Andrew, the owners, and the theme of the night was Chardonnay, and it was so fun for me. I haven't been to one of those in forever. No one has, I guess. And I probably tasted 30 Chardonnays that were across the board stellar. I mean, like really, really good wines. And these are the store staff bringing the wines from the wineries. So they're buying the bottle and bring it themselves. So they may not be bringing the 30, 40, $50 bottles of Chardonnay, right? They're bringing, what they could afford to buy perhaps. And there was a whole range, but I was really excited about what I tasted last night or 2 nights ago. And for us, what I think is probably the most consistent and most interesting variety that we grow in Ontario. And I know the popular wisdom would say Riesling and other things, and of course we're the house of Baco Noir and all the rest of it. But Chardonnay is very special in Niagara. I for Our approach to Chardonnay has evolved over the last 30 years for sure. We prefer to make a style that's lots of extract on the bigger end of things, so that it can support oak aging. But again, I always go back to oak is the frame; it's not the picture. The wine has to be expressive of the place. So I want this wine to have like density to it, but not oily and rich and gross. It's got to be like a good aged cheddar, as opposed to, you know, super young cheddar or mozzarella, kind of boring and bland. It's got to have character to it, but it also has to be reflective of the place. We're lucky. This may be the last story I say about Chardonnay. We're lucky in that we have multiple plantings on our farm. Some of them that are now, Christ, go back to 1988, and
Okay,
they're
22, like
old
45,
blocks.
almost 40, well, 45 years old.
Yeah, they're old. They're old.
No,
So
no, no, no,
30,
35,
30
30,
something. Yeah,
30.
30
Yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
I'm 48. So
Yeah,
they're, and
that's
what
why I
they
refer
are,
to my age. I'm like, whoa, I'm not that old. Go.
and tell you what's different about them that's kind of fun. The original planting on our farm was a field mix of clones. So literally, we called up the nursery and said, "We need Chardonnay. Um, See you in 2 years." And we got clippings that are a mixture of clones. There's a handful of clones that are typically grown in this region that are the most popular ones around the world. But we got a field mix, so we don't know what the hell's in there. We have an idea, but vine to vine, it's all different. And we happen to put it on an absolutely beautiful site. And then that is a core to our reserve tiers of Chardonnay, our estate wines. Later, people moved to a different approach, and we followed with the suit, which was you take a vineyard and you plant it a mono block of one clone or maybe two clones, bigger plantings, and those are interesting because they take advantage of the terroir of that site, but it's all one big piece of one clone on one terroir. The upside of that is if it works well, you've got a lot of the same thing. The downside is you got a lot of sameness. And then later, uh, there was a merging of those ideas, which was to take a terroir, a piece of land that's got an interesting soil structure and what have you, an aspect and all the rest of it, but plant 5 rows of this clone, 10 rows of that clone, and so on, and kind of mix it up a little bit. And that gives you a little bit of the best of both worlds in some sense. It's kind of like a field
Flexibility,
mix,
right? When in terms of blending.
flexibility. And so when our estate range, our estate Chardonnay, which is now called Three Hills Chardonnay, or will be soon, we're phasing that in, is actually sourcing from those three different. Oh, that's it, yeah, those three different eras of planting, and each of them we've learned how they work. We've kind of learned how to make them do what they do, and bringing those three different parcels together to create a really interesting, I think, really interesting bottle of wine. But the essence of it is intensity that can support oak but not be dominated by it. It has lushness to it, but still acidity. And these are things that winemakers often say and what have you. But it should make you happy when you drink it. It should bring joy. It should be like fun. It'll still be a fun wine.
And that's something I have to mention because that estate Chardonnay at $22 or something like that, it's extremely well priced for the quality of the juice that you get in there. Because now when we're talking about premium Chardonnay from specific appellation, I just got back from Ontario. Now I'm getting used to the 40, 45, $50 when we're
Gotcha.
talking about. So it's okay because the quality is there. When I tasted that wine I did a special for World Chardonnay Day. I had the longest live show in the world. I tasted 52 Chardonnay that day. All Canadian Chardonnay, 52 during a 6-hour stretch. And the thing that I noted, what I mentioned with that specific, your Chardonnay, it's at the top end, like top end of that entry level pricing. Because for Chardonnay, if you exclude the unoak part of the Chardonnay, where you can find some of the $15 to $19, but
Sure.
now we're talking about the $22. A complex Chardonnay at that price. I was absolutely amazed of the complexity of that Chard for the price point. Incredible. So yeah,
Well,
that's why I wanted to touch base on your Chardonnay program. I was really intrigued on how you done that.
well, thank you. And our Speck Family Reserve Chardonnay uh, is a tier above that, and it really focuses in on that old original vineyard with the field mix in it. That's a really neat site. And I mean, that's, I'll be honest with you, because I get it all for free, right? So I steal that wine and bring it home, and that's all we drink. Those two wines. And my wife and I love Chardonnay, and yeah, Niagara and Canada, frankly, produces incredible Chardonnay at a hell of a discount. And people don't always understand. There was an article in the Globe a couple of weeks ago talking about how expensive. The byline didn't fit the article. It's like, why is Canadian wine expensive? I always drives me nuts. Canadian wine isn't expensive. Canadian wine is premium wine at a discount. Uh, if you compare us to, Chilean wine, okay, well, yeah, entry level Chilean wine. Well, yeah, well, we don't make that here. We don't even try to make that. But if you put us in the context of who our competitive set is, California and Burgundy, and frankly Bordeaux, even in some years, it's a deal. And Champagne.
I know it
Some of the
drives me bonkers. I'm on your team with
ridiculous.
that, and people, it drives
Yeah.
me nuts. Canadian wines are overpriced. That's the term,
Oh, they're
overpriced.
discount.
Who gets me freaking bonkers? I'm like, okay, you talk to me like any Montrachet or Meursault or
Totally.
any of the top village, you can't find a wine under $75. Most of them are at $200. And you
Totally.
are telling me that our premium are overpriced? You're nuts. It drives me bonkers.
Well, what's a bottle of Clos de Mouche from Burgundy worth?
Well,
What,
let's say
150?
Clos des Mouches, let's say from Bouchard Père-Fils, Clos des Mouches will be at $175.
Okay.
Easy.
All right, and then pour Hidden Bench Felsick Vineyard Chardonnay against that, and you'll be shocked.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
Hidden Bench Felsick. Harold, he's heard me say this before, is a wine I'd pour in that context any day of the week. They're great. I mean, good vintage of both of them side by side, a comparable vintage. Put them next to each other. It's a great bottle of wine.
absolutely.
Any day.
I tasted Thomas Batchelder, the Foxcroft, Wismer Foxcroft North
Mm-hmm.
the other day. And you know what? I'll put that beside a Meursault, a good vintage Meursault, and I would surprise a lot of Frenchie, a lot of them.
Sure.
So, and for a quarter of the price, it's crazy. So people telling me that Canadian wine's overpriced, I'm out of that conversation. I get mad every time.
Yeah, and it's not to take those other wines down by any means. Like those great wines that have built these wonderful reputations that they deserve are wonderful, and we're just working our way up the greasy pole, I guess. But it's there's just a lot of incredible value here, but it's for those who get it, and for those who are interested. If it's value you're looking for, we have it in spades. If it's cheap you're looking for, we don't have that. But cheap is
Yeah.
different than value. Those are two different things.
Marcel Morgenstern told me something a year ago, and I was talking about like the vineyard around him and the competition. He said, "Carl, I have no competition coming from Niagara. I have no competition coming from
True.
Canada. My competition comes from Chile and Argentina." I'm like, you know what, brother? This is a heck of an answer, and
Sure.
that is true, right? So. Yeah, when our government bring tankers of bulk Chilean wine yeah, I know. Okay, enough of that conversation. Danielle, you've been really generous of your time. Thank you very much. If you ever come our way to BC, please let us know. We would like to take you on a
Absolutely.
tour, and we'll go on a Chardonnay hunt together.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. I'll definitely be out that way, like before too long. In fact, next spring. So
Amazing.
That's awesome.
This is my problem with the wine tonight. It's all gone. It's all gone. So, Carl, get your butt down here. I need more.
Take charge.
There you go. Well, Danielle, I'll let you go because it's late. It's getting dawn down there. Thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us. It was a blast chatting with you. Greatly appreciate your partnership this week. And next time we're in your area, for sure,
Definitely.
we're
Come
going to
visit.
get together. We need to open a good bottle of Chard together.
Absolutely. That'd be a pleasure. Lovely to meet you guys for the first time online. And we'll see you in Niagara next, or actually maybe in BC next. Yeah.
There you go. Take care, Danielle. Thanks a million.
Take care,
Thanks
folks.
so
See you now.
much. See you
Bye-bye.
soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, that
Holy
was so cool.
Jesus Christ. I just love these conversations. I love it.
Totally.
Another Chardonnay brother. I got to start that band of brother, like exclusively Chardonnay boys, and we can taste Chard for hours. Something like that. Need to think about something here.
That's true. And I love what you guys talked about with the side by side from the old world for people like me who haven't experienced that kind of thing yet.
Yeah, great conversation. Amazing stories about families, about vineyard, about Short Hill appellation that we rarely like. It's not like it's rarely like an appellation that come up to a conversation right out of the gate. So yeah, you know what? It's one of the original from Niagara. With so much history with that family, so much history with that winery, so much diversity with the portfolio, and also an incredible value. When we talk value wine, to me, it's not always about a low price point. It's always about over delivering the price that you charge. And from the Speck Family Reserve to the entry level line, all of their wines are over delivering. So we have a great deal this week with Henry of Pelham. The wines are absolutely shining. What I have here, it's pretty darn cool as well. That red is amazing, amazing.
So which
Merlot
one are we drinking?
This is the Speck Family Reserve Cab Merlot.
This one
2019, yeah. And this is 92 plus points, Carl's Wine Club. We'll put that in our tasting notes. I don't know who has already. I think Rick Van Sickle maybe has already gave that wine a healthy score. But I love the acidity of that wine. But more than anything, I like the ripeness of the fruit, that little tobacco leaves, that nice tannin, still a little bit like nasty and feisty. Not nice, not nasty. Feisty. I love the pull, the grip. This is a beautiful wine. That's going to age for a long time. Wow, beautiful 2019 vintage, the Speck Family Reserve Cab Merlot.
Well, you know who also gave it 92 points? Your favorite, Natalie McLean.
Oh, my friend Natalie. See, we have the same palate. I'm so proud of myself.
That's so cool. See? This is something, Carl, because you don't remember other people's scores, and then I kind of do. So you not knowing anything, you pick a score out of the air, and usually most other ratings that I see out there are pretty much the same. So you have something with these ratings. I think it comes down to tasting. I don't know how many hundreds of wines every few months, right?
Yes, it's a gorgeous wine. Wow. And also with the Fumé Blanc, I love the conversation we had about the Fumé Blanc. We brought up the Robert Mondavi conversation back at the Hawaii, we're calling it Fumé Blanc, and the wine. I think 93 points from Karen Hammond from the Toronto Star, and I'm right with her. That Fumé Blanc is stunning. Freshness, bright acidity, but roundness brought from the oak. I know, hey, it's really good, eh? Really, really, really good.
Well, you're making me want to take another sip, but there's none left. So
I'll be joining you down below, and like in a couple minutes, I think it's time to wrap it up here. I want to say that next week we are featuring Red Rooster. Red Rooster from the Naramata bench is coming your way. We have some really cool wine as well that we're going to release on Sunday for our VIP. A GSM, an estate Malbec, the 2018 Meritage was I tasted at the winery last week, and the brand new, the national release, the first ever, the Semillon 2020, who's been sitting in the cellar at the winery for over a year and a half now. We are releasing it pre-release official with Carl's Wine Club on Sunday, the Semillon 2020 from Red Rooster. I already had a little taste of it. This is a really cool wine. So that's coming up next week. But this week, it's Henry of Pelham week. We have an outstanding lineup, crazy great deal about shipping, free shipping for 12 across the board, free shipping for Ontario for 6, and a very, very affordable $15 for the other provinces. So great deal on shipping.
It's a great time to try out this winery if you haven't yet. And
it's worth it. It's worth it. They've been around forever. That rosé, $14.95. When I was thinking like a hot Monday or Tuesday day, and you want a value rosé, that's the way to go. That's the way to go. It's slightly off dry at 9 grams of residual sugar, but bright acid. So it's very well put together. There's nothing sweet candy in there. Forget about that. There's a nice sensation of dryness. It's not sweet. Slightly off dry, like that little strawberry and cream, but just beautiful wine for $15. Blind taste, I gave it $22 to $24. So great wine, 90 points that I gave it. Love that rosé. So we have a heck of a beautiful lineup. That Baco, 1995 Baco, really impressed with that. And yeah, the lineup goes on and on with one of the like great Chardonnay, Fumé, and Pinot Noir Reserve. So get to it. An outstanding lineup and great family, great people. So yeah, Saturday we have a little special event here by the lake. My top 6 rosé from the Okanagan. We have a few seats available if you want to join us to learn about why I choose these 6 rosés. So we're gonna have a blast here on the patio by the lake here in Summerland. So send me a direct message, email Mira, email me, but join us if you feel like it.
Yeah, if you happen to be in the Okanagan, and if not, stay tuned because we will publish what those 6 wines were and why later.
There you go. So anything else, Mira?
That's it. I'm so excited because we have this Cab Merlot open from Henry of Pelham, and I love it. And we are having lasagna, which I think would go well with this. What do you think?
Absolutely, 100%. 100%. That bright acid, that feistiness, gonna cut through the cheese and the sauce. So yeah, love it. Perfect meal for that Cab Merlot. So let's get to it because I'm starving. I can't wait. And yeah. Awesome. Maybe we might do a little live appearance early before the tasting or right after the tasting on Saturday maybe. So stay tuned about our top 6 Okanagan Merlot. If you're in the Okanagan,
rosé.
Did I say Merlot? Yeah, I want to say rosé. If you're in the Okanagan, get your ass out there and come and taste with us. It's gonna be a heck of a time. So Carl's Wine Club members, Canadian wine lovers, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday night. Cheers.
Cheers.
Talk to you next time.